Hello, everyone. Welcome to Composer's Voice. My name is Robert Foisey, and I'm the director of Composer's Voice. I created Composer's Voice in order to give a venue and opportunity for composers to get their works heard by audiences around the world. About a year ago, I was speaking with one of our collaborators and musicians that just champions new music all over, Andrew White, about putting together a composer's voice for works written for him. Yeah, Andrew is a fabulous singer, and he has participated in another one of Vox Novus' projects, 15 Minutes of Fame. And he has had like many works written for him in doing that. So when we talked a little bit, we decided this would be a great project to put our efforts into and bring the composers that you're about to see and hear. We have a whole bunch of them here today. And some that have recorded some things about their pieces, and a lot here that are in person. We'll get to hear them in a minute. But let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Andrew White, who currently serves on the voice faculty of the University of Nebraska at Kearney. He holds a bachelor's and master's degree, as well as an artistic diploma and doctorate from the Cleveland Institute of Music Case Western Reserve University. Previous faculty positions include the Indiana University of Pennsylvania, the University of Akron, Miriam College, Lake Erie College, Baldwin Wallace College, Conservatory of Music, and Ashland University. In 1995, he made his New York debut at Weill Recital Hall at Carnegie Hall, in a program devoted to the songs of Frederick Koch, with the composer at the piano. Ken Smith of the New York Concert Review hailed Andrew White as a formidable interpreter. Every song composer should be so lucky with his collaborators. I wholeheartedly agree. And with that said, let's bring on Andrew. Hi, Andy. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. And you know what? Let me give the show over to you.
Okay, so the first piece that we have here is by R. Michael Daugherty. He is a composer who received his BA degree from Denison University and has a Master of Music and a Doctor of Musical Arts from Ohio State University, and has retired from his longtime position at Coastal Carolina Community College in Jacksonville, North Carolina, and has moved to Vero Beach, Florida, lucky dog. Do we have a video of him talking about his piece?
Hi, I'm R. Michael Daugherty, here to discuss Crab My Dog. Shakespeare's plays often contain comic rustic characters who act like they know exactly what's going on, but in reality, their explanations leave the rest of us quite confused. One such character is Launce from The Two Gentlemen of Verona. Launce is Proteus's servant, and he is dismayed that he will have to leave his family and follow Proteus to Milan. When the music starts, there is a kind of confused cacophony. Launce is confused. He cannot understand why, when his family is weeping and moaning and crying and sighing at his departure, his dog Crab sheds not a single tear. In order to give us a better view of things, he uses some props. A pair of old shoes, a staff, his hat, and the dog itself. And the result is even more confusing. When I conceived this piece in 2014, it was for a live performance of 5 instruments and voice. The 5 instruments were clarinet, bass clarinet, bassoon, trumpet, and trombone. When the opportunity came to send a recording to Andrew White for use with his singing, I realized that any rendering of those 5 instruments would not be quite interesting enough. Live instruments would be different. So, for the recording, I added 5 unpitched percussion, xylophone, tuba, and viola. There are various elements in the piece that will repeat themselves. One of these is that when Lawrence talks about his sister, the music begins with just the woodwinds, the 2 clarinets and bassoon. You could listen for various instruments and various repetitions within the piece, but you'd be better served by enjoying Andrew's performance. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So I do not happen to have the props today. I'll be just sort of miming them, but the idea will still be there. Okay, so Crab, my dog. And I'll go ahead and start this and we'll go. I think Crab, my dog, be the soundest natured dog that lives. My mother weeping, my father wailing, my sister crying, the maid howling, our cat wringing her hands, wringing her hands, wringing her hands. And all our house in a great perplexity. Yet did not this cool-hearted cur shed one tear. He is a stone, a very pebble stone, and has no more pity in him than a dog. Why, my grandam, having no eyes, look you, wept herself blind at my parting. Nay, I'll show you the manner of it. This shoe is my father's. No, this left shoe is my father. No, no, this left shoe is my mother. Nay, that cannot be so either. Yes, it is so, it is so. It hath the worser soul, it hath the worser soul. This shoe, with the hole in it, is my mother, and this my father. A vengeance on it, there 'tis, there 'tis. Now, sir, this staff is my sister, for look you, she is as white as a lily and as small as a wand. This hat, this Nan, our maid, I am the dog. No, the dog is himself. and I am the dog. The dog is me, and I am myself. I'm so. Now come I to my Father, your blessing. Now should not this shoe speak a word for weeping? Now should I kiss my Father, well he weeps now come I to my mother, oh, that she could speak now like a wood woman. Well, I kiss her. Why, there 'tis, here's my mother's breath up and down. Now come I to my sister, mark the moan she makes. Now the dog all this while sheds not a tear, nor speaks a word. But see how I lay the dust with my tears. It is no matter if the net were lost, for it is the unkindest tide that ever any man tied. Why, he that's tied here Crab, my dog. Okay, the next piece that we have is by Alan Molineux, who holds his BM from DePauw University, a Master's in Music from Eastman, and a DMA from Florida State University, is now retired from his longtime position at Claflin University in Orangeburg, South Carolina, where I believe he is still living. And I believe Alan is with us. So Alan, you want to tell us a little bit about your piece?
Yeah, before I get to that, believe it or not, we met at Wichita Falls at the College Music Society regional meeting with Midwestern State University, where you did a lecture on 15 Minutes of Fame. and that's where I probably talked to you afterwards, after you did your presentation.
I remember you. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So that's one of those little funny things about life. And then the introduction that we just heard about with our Michael Daugherty, and it said he got a bachelor's degree from Denison. I was just at Denison University about 6 weeks ago at the New Music Festival. So I had a string orchestra piece being played there for that time. So sometimes it's a smaller world than we think when we get to things. Anyway, about the song. About 3 years ago, there was a call for scores from a countertenor out on the West Coast. And he received a whole bunch of songs, and he went through, because he was going to do a recital, and he chose a number of selections, and this song that you're going to be singing, Music Always Round Me, was selected by him. So I was very thrilled about the idea that it would be receiving a premiere, because I wrote the song specifically for his call for scores. And so when he chose it, I was very excited, but the recital just never materialized for whatever reason. So then I said to myself, okay, I've written this song for a countertenor with a very wide range. So what am I going to do with this? Because I don't think I'm going to get many other call for scores from countertenors. So my first reaction was look at the range of his voice and to realize it fit the cello perfectly. So I just took the vocal part and rewrote it so that it would really fit the cello had the right notes. I didn't have to change the notes. I just had to make articulation changes and bowing changes and that sort of thing. And that was performed 2 times during the pandemic online, again with College Music Society performances in mind. And then I decided to take that work and spread it out to be a choral piece. So for soprano, alto, tenor, bass, and piano. And then came along your call for scores, and I just simply made some adjustments in terms of octaves. And then you suggested that you wanted to do it, but there needed to be still some more range changes. And so I wound up now with a 4th rendition of this song. And beyond that, I don't think I have anything else to mention about the song.
Well, I was particularly excited about this because I had just done a recital devoted to art song settings of the poet Walt Whitman, because 2019 was his bicentennial. He was born in 1819. So I had done a lot of research into different art song settings of his texts. And Music Always Round Me is a very musical text, but oddly not set by any composers that I could find. So this is a really beautiful setting of a very musical text that isn't set by a lot of other people. So anyhow, I'll go ahead and sing this for you, and see if you like it as much as I do. That music always round me, unceasing, unbeginning, yet long untaught I did not hear. But now the chorus I hear and am elated. Tenor strong, ascending with power and health, with glad notes of daybreak I hear a soprano at intervals sailing buoyantly over the tops of immense waves. A transparent bass shuddering lusciously under and through the universe, the triumphant tutti, the funeral of grace. I hear not the volumes of sound merely. I am moved by exquisite meanings. I listen to the different voices winding in and out, striving, contending with fiery vehemence to excel each other in emotion. I do not think the performers know themselves. But now I think I begin to know Thank you, Alan. The next piece on the program we have is by Lawrence Kramer, who is a distinguished professor of English and music at Fordham University in New York. He is a world-renowned musicologist. And I did not realize this when I first started working on this, but I started, to look up just, as I was going to prepare these notes. Read the Wikipedia article on him, and then I read, okay, so he's written 14 books and 150 articles, and is the editor of 19th Century Music, the journal that I referred to over and over again when I was doing my doctorate, and I went, oh my God, it's that Lawrence Kramer. Lawrence Kramer, this particular Lawrence Kramer who wrote this music, is a very famous musicologist whose writings are translated into 10 different languages. And Lawrence, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for a long and wonderful contribution to the knowledge of music and music history. I think I quoted you in several of the papers that I wrote for my doctorate, and I know I've read lots of your writings and have gleaned a lot from your scholarship, and so thank you very much, and I am honored to have the opportunity to sing your music today. So, with that, let's hear Lawrence talk a little bit about his pieces.
Well, first off, Andy, thank you so much for that. Those very kind words. I much appreciated. Thank you, thank you. Just by coincidence, I have to say this sort of a small worldish thing. I have also set the Whitman poem that you just sang in that very beautiful setting, but for high voice. So it was very enjoyable to hear a different kind of setting in the baritone region, which is a song region I love writing for baritone. I've been privileged to work with a good many, and it's been wonderful. And so I'm very, very pleased that you're here to do this today. I mentioned the Whitman in part because it is a kind of expressive world apart from the poems that we're going to be hearing, Settings of Poetry by Stephen Crane. Whitman has this magnificent kind of mystical embrace of all things, and Stephen Crane's strange aphoristic little poems are kind of, as the very first one makes quite clear, a sort of hostile confrontation between a human being and the universe, complaining of just how badly the universe can treat one sometimes, which is sadly all too timely a reflection at the moment. But that said, let me pass on and say simply that this opportunity is particularly pleasing to me because I've wanted for a long time to write settings of these poems from Crane's 1895 volume, From the Black Riders. These poems are really quite unusual. And they, on the one hand, are of the kind that is sometimes compared to a scorpion. They're poems with a sting in their tail. But on the other hand, they are oddly idealistic in some ways. And I was trying to balance the irony against the idealism. Well, I hope that that comes through. The other thing that I was eager to do on basis of a very happy experience I had about 10 years ago with this combination of sounds is to compose some songs for voice and percussion, which is, I think, a remarkably flexible and expressive combination. And I very much enjoy working in that medium, and I hope that you will enjoy the results. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Said to the universe, Sir, I exist. However, replied the universe, the fact has not created in me a sense of obligation. 3 little birds in a row sat musing, musing, musing. A man passed near that place. Then did the little birds nudge each other. They said, he thinks he can sing. He thinks he can sing. They threw back their heads to laugh. Laugh. With quaint countenances, they regarded him. They were very curious. Very curious. Curious. Ha 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 ha. Those 3 little birds in a row. I saw a man pursuing the horizon. I was disturbed by this. I accosted the man. It is futile, I said. Futile. You can never. You heaven. You lie, he said, and ran on. A man saw a ball of gold in the sky. He climbed for it. He climbed for it, and eventually, he achieved it. It was clay. It was clay. It was clay. Now this is the strange part. This is the strange part. When a man went to the earth and looked again, lo, there was a ball of gold. There was the ball of gold. Now this is the strange part. This is the strange part. It was a ball of gold. It was a ball of gold. By the heavens, it was a ball of gold. Thank you, Lawrence. The next piece we have is by Stanley M. Hoffman. And Stanley grew up in my favorite town, Cleveland, but left there before I arrived, and has spent most of his life in Boston. He holds a BM from Boston Conservatory, a Master of Music from New England Conservatory, and a PhD from Brandeis University. And he's very active as a choral conductor in the Boston area. And Stanley, I wonder if you might tell us a little bit about pairs.
Sure. Back in 1988, when on the PhD track in music composition at Brandeis University, I began collecting poems to set to music someday when my muse responds to each. This includes the text Pairs by Linda Paston. The idea for certain poems was and is to create songs of passion. This is the first one I have completed. I had planned to submit a second song to you, a setting of a text, Her Body by Jared Metz, but urgent family business prevented its completion in time to meet the deadline. I hope to get that song to you sometime in the future. Requiring an obligato synthesized accompaniment in the call for scores that was behind this concert was the biggest surprise and expressive challenge for me. It's a requirement which I treat musically the opposite of a school of composers whom I respect, but who prefer sounds that only synthesizers can make. My approach was to create both a strange and yet sensuous setting by creating a super string orchestra and a super harp, along with some other sounds such as an occasional super voice and super cello to interact with the baritone soloist. Super has more to do with range and timbre than anything else. And the result is a salient, effective miniature that alternates between sliding hallucination-like sounds and boldly romantic arpeggiated ones. The ranges for both the baritone and synthesizer are wide. Do not be surprised by this song's brevity. It's all of a minute long, but it is a minute that makes an impression. I hope you enjoy it.
Some say it was a pair, evade. Why is the shape of the room? Of the cello who sing a song is grief for the parent tree. Why else the fruit itself, tawny and sweet, which your lover over breakfast lets go your pear-shaped breast to reach for. Thank you, Stanley. The next piece we have is by Mark McFerron, and Mark McFerron is sort of a powerhouse in the world of contemporary music, very active in organizations such as SCI and CUSA, and is the professor of music at Lewis University in Chicago. He's also the chair of the department, and he runs the electronic music program there, and he's just got a series of hats. He has his DMA from the Conservatory of Music at the University of Mississippi, Kansas City, and one of his teachers was Moberly, who I always remember because I saw a performance of a work of his for trombone that was to a track. It was performed at the Cleveland Museum of Art. They have a concert hall there, and the track was created out of sounds that were made from the trumpet itself, or from the trombone itself. So it was a very interesting piece, and I always remember because the trombonist didn't want to turn pages, so he had a line of stands all the way across the stage. It sort of progressed from one side of the stage to the other. I always remember that. But it was an incredible piece by Mike's teacher. But anyhow, wonderful composer. I've sung some of his music in the past. I believe he is not here, but we have a tape where he can talk a little bit about his music.
Hi, I'm Mike McFerron, and I'm the composer of X Marks the Sirens. I wrote this work in 2013 for Kansas City-based mezzo-soprano Katie Crawford. The text is by a colleague of mine, Chicago-based poet Jackie White. I want to take this opportunity to thank Robert Voisey for all he does to promote new music by living composers, and also to thank Andrew White. This is the second work I've written that Andrew sang, and I really appreciate him for being such a champion of new music. I hope you enjoy the work. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mike.
People don't change. At the end of her DNA, an added twist, Vixen gene, where it was written, her heart became a shack for bits of the dead.
Because the myths repeat, your body will sing them toward you. Their bodies will break against rock. A trickle separates desire, love, soul sin.
Their bodies will break against rock. A trickle separates desire, love. Sometimes you have to shut up, unbelieve what you read.
Thank you, Mike. The next piece we have is by Lisa, I'll probably mispronounce this name, Neher. Neher. I've never heard it pronounced, only seen it written. But Lisa is a rare and special type of composer because she is a singer-composer. Most composers are, many of them are pianists, and they're all, generally instrumentalists. But for a composer to have their primary instrument be the voice is unusual. And of course, she writes for herself, and she wrote this piece, I think, for herself, or at least I heard a recording of her performing it beautifully, and got lots of wonderful ideas about how I should approach it from listening to that. She has a bachelor's degree in three-pronged bachelor's degree: voice, composition, and theater. So she's got this sort of, and a lot of her works are like this, that they're incorporating aspects of theater and voice, and that is the world she's working in. She also has a Master of Music composition from the University of Kansas, and a DMA from the University of Iowa, which is in vocal performance and pedagogy, and she now lives, I know she's originally from Seattle and is in that area, but I'm not exactly sure. Are you living in Oregon or Seattle? Anyhow, here's Lisa to tell us a little bit about her piece.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And yeah, I'm coming at you from Portland, Oregon, which is my new home for the last 4 or 5 years. And I'm so excited because I think this is the first time that a baritone is performing American Water. So I can't wait to hear how this piece comes to life in that beautiful resonant range. And this piece is an exploration of bodies of water that separate us from the people that we love, that form the sort of boundaries of different countries and nations and continents and places, and how we define sort of our environment, oceans, rivers, and the like. So I took the lyrics from various folk songs from the UK, the British Isles, America, but I reset them with new melodic material and sort of mashed them up. So we get a lot of these adverbs of place, over and under and beyond and across, and then incorporated some sound effect noises to emulate splashing surf and crashing waves. So super excited to hear it.
Thank you, Lisa. So and another thing that's interesting about this particular piece in the context of this program, so this is a program that is devoted towards the idea of accompaniment and working with fixed media and all of that. But this is a piece that is unaccompanied. So it gives us this contrast between works such as the one we just heard, which is very richly orchestrated through electronic media, and here we have absolutely nothing but me. So the contrast, I think, is very interesting. So, I will go ahead and begin. I do have to give myself a pitch. rolling river. I cannot cross. I cannot cross. My body, build me a boat, my body. Build me a boat, build me a boat, build me. I cannot cross, I cannot cross. Oh, you rolling river, down by the river, down the stream, down, I'm bound gently down across over my body, bound down. Thank you, Lisa. The next piece we have, Civil Wars, is by Greg Steinke. And Greg, I believe, is currently the president of the National NACUSA, National Association of Composers USA. He has a BM from Oberlin, a Master of Music from Michigan State University, an MFA from the University of Iowa, and a PhD from Michigan State University. And he has taught in more schools than I could shake a stick at, and ended up with a longtime position from which he is now retired at Marylhurst University, and he lives in Depot Bay, Oregon. I believe he has a video to show. So.
Hello, I'm Greg Steinke, located in Depot Bay, Oregon, on the Oregon coast, and working as an independent composer. Today you're going to hear a performance of a short song of mine, Civil Wars, with poetry by Carol Coffey Raposa. Civil Wars is basically a poem kind of connecting the 19th century Civil War that we know with what goes on today in some parts of our country in the last several years. And I think it just expresses in a few short words kind of the scene that some of us may have experienced firsthand or certainly have read about. And I just attempted to recreate the kind of a sound background and an accompaniment that would illuminate and emphasize the words that you hear. And I think that's all I need to say about it. Hope you enjoy it. This piece was premiered originally in San Antonio several years ago for a festival for which this was specifically written. And I appreciate this additional performance. Thank you very much.
One thing I would just add to what he says. So I did the premiere of this in San Antonio, but that was a version with piano, and with some live pianist. And for this version, he scored it for brass, which I think is a really interesting choice, but very different sounding from when I sang it before in San Antonio. Curls around Antietam, oracles appear, they pound their fists and often can hear the click of tongues trained on the shattered glass and brick. Marauders in black cruisers circle round the helpless. Guards have burrowed underground, while Lincoln dies each day by some new trick. take more than a searing war. Offered up at Appomattox, more than shining words of Gettysburg's dark watch to stop the blood-stained pageant and the march parade of graves from Ferguson to Watts. Hearts lost to knives and crosshairs, calls, and shots. Parade of graves from Ferguson to Watts. Hearts lost to knives and crosshairs, calls, and shots. Shots! Thank you, Greg. The next piece we have is by Blair Whittington. And Blair holds a BA in composition from California State University at LA, and then got his MLS in library science from San Jose State University and became music librarian of the Brand Library and Arts Center in Glendale, California, which is a position he still holds. I sang one other piece of Blair's, and really admire his music. Is Blair here, or are we hearing a video of him?
Hi everyone, my name's Blair Whittington. I'm a composer in Los Angeles, California, and the name of my piece is Dry Season. The title of my piece, Dry Season, came about as I've always lived in Los Angeles, but I thought about what would it be like to be a hermit and to live alone and to grow your own food and be self-sufficient, something I've never experienced always living here. That would be interesting, but then what would you do if you had to live through a drought and you're all alone? And that's kind of the idea of the piece, and it gives Andrew some acting opportunities. And for the electronics, there's some nature sounds in there, which I think are pretty obvious with the wind and the birds and so forth. And there's also some, there's gamelan and koto in there. I wanted it to be colorful, even though the subject matter is fairly dark. You can be both at the same time, I think. So I hope you have a great conference, and I hope everybody enjoys the concert, and I will be watching online. Thank you very much.
Is the reason Slowly, my garden becomes barren. My tree has not grown plums, not a cloud in the sky, and the nights are so cold. I have some water to drink, but the birds flew past my garden. I wish the rain would come, and my worrying would be Thank you, Blair. And the last piece on the program is called Street Fair, the Quartet by Stephen Stanziano. And Stephen is a Clevelander, where I lived for 25 years and loved my favorite city. And he holds his Master of Music and PhD from Kent State University, and his Bachelor of Music from Cleveland State University, where he now is a professor. And he also teaches at two schools that I used to teach at, University of Akron and Hiram College. And I've sung other pieces of Stephen's before. I love his music, and I'm really excited to be able to perform this one. Again, I'm so glad that he submitted something and that it was such a wonderful piece. But so I believe we have a video of Stephen.
Hello, this is Stephen Stanziano. For this project, I chose a poem by Pulitzer Prize winner Marvin Bell. I've used Marvin Bell's poems in the past for other projects, and I find his writing colorfully descriptive, and I thought it would lend itself well to this project. Andrew White has an extensive opera background, and I felt that the text in this piece titled Street Fair, the Quartet would be very appropriate. Melodically in this piece, I set the text to as much word painting as I could, as I thought it was appropriate. Harmonically, the stacked perfect fourths and occasional augmented fourths with the stacked perfect fourths are pretty much most of the harmonic content in this piece. I'd like to acknowledge Robert Voicey at Vox Novus and the folks over at Virtual Concert Halls, and of course, Andrew White. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. exhaustion, moving the clouds, and the Olympic mountains labored to bring forth sunlight, and the sun itself. Then there was sustained applause for the big woman who sang the blues, for the frail, anxious woman singing jazz that leaped among the furniture, for the beautiful one, and for the one with the false hand planted at the cuff of her blouse like a cut out of a glove, and two were white, and two were black. New clouds came, and some were white, and some were black. The songs of the four women rose into the sky. Sand was amplified in the center of a seashell until it was expanded like the bread inside a slaughtered holiday turkey. Great eagle heaped air inside its chest and was proud, and underneath the concrete on which there stood the harmonies of four women, two white and two black, was the webbing on which the city also stood. How much was in the great snow-capped mountains, hunkered down below the horizon, behind the singers and their songs, to threaten and survive us. Here the music shrouds us with the absolute sincerity of a dream. Of a dream. And the true wordless evidence of touch that renders is the entire body, a heart bearing the drawn-out pose of a pearl in an oyster, so that some dance slowly to the notes that keep low, and some rise higher like hands unfolding. It was the best of illusions, worthy of life, that everyone within the sound of a song can dance at the same time on the wire of a spider. Thank you, Stephen. And that concludes our program.
Thank you, Andrew. Let me bring on the composers. Yeah. Awesome performance. Thank you, Andrew. So what do you guys think?
It was really, really good.
Absolutely. As somebody said, awesome performance. That'll do.
So, when Andy and I were talking about this about a year ago, we were talking about sort of collaboration and accompaniment, and just sort of reaching out to composers and seeing how they would write for Andy, or to make a sort of a connection. So, what did you think about that sort of idea and being able to submit pieces for this project? Anybody? Lisa, how about you?
Oh, well, I didn't write for Composer Plus Tape, even though that's very cool. But a big champion for me is the championing of solo voice as a totally valid and wonderful genre in and of itself. Every other instrument has an unaccompanied solo repertoire, and it's only singers who tell someone, I'm going to sing something solo, and they're like, oh, you can't, we don't have a piano. As I discovered when I curated an entire program of these and booked a tour in the Midwest. And I love working with pianists, but to also have this solo repertoire is super important for singers, and it opens up different avenues for performance, different beautiful things we can do. Nobody thinks that someone shouldn't walk on stage with their cello by themselves. So it's just wonderful. And I think, again, Andrew brought up my theater background, and I think one of the reasons I'm so excited about it is kind of a blending of monologue with song. That said, tape is great. Singer plus tape is super cool, and I love hearing everybody's wonderful accompaniments in their different ways.
One thing you need, I think, is more singers to ask for it. Compositionally, it's very challenging, right, to just do the voice by itself. And
but why?
The singers I've worked with, have all said voice and piano, or in some cases, voice and chamber ensemble. But you need to encourage people to ask, because I can't speak for any other composer, but if somebody asked me to do it, I'd do it. Why not? It's a lovely challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I'm also one of those vocal composers. So I also agree, there should be more solo stuff, and Andrew made a great choice, and sort of all the pieces I felt were a great program that compared and contrasted and complemented each other.
Well, one of the things that brought about this program this concept for this program was just practicality. And it's an interesting thing. COVID has been a terrible thing, of course, but in some ways there's some good things that have come out of it, and this is one of them. For example, I just sang a whole concert in a room by myself, and nobody had to be exposed to my aerosols, or me to theirs. This is part of what has come about is that we find that getting together with other musicians to perform is in COVID has been dangerous, and so to do a project like this is not only safe, but it makes it possible to put together combinations of instruments that you would never be able to put together otherwise. Some of these pieces are calling for, a variety of sounds, that would be nearly impossible to put together, the ensemble for, and then to include electronic sounds and sampled sounds, and it expands. The idea of working with fixed media really expands the composer's palette in a lot of ways, and then it also makes it possible for us to transmit this concert over YouTube or whatever, and not have to deal with performing with other performers and there being a lag. People are using Jam Kazam, for instance, and they're able to perform on Zoom or whatever, but they have to have headphones on, and I can't have headphones on to sing because, just try it. Put your hands over your ears and speak. Say through it, you'll see that you have no kind of proprioception of your own vocal production with a pair of headphones on. For me, it was an idea born of practicality that brought forth enormous fruit. That was a great pleasure to be able to take advantage of.
You know what? And let me ask you another sort of obstacle. So I'm a vocal composer. I'm also very much an electronic composer, and I've written a lot of pieces for lack of a better term, instrument and tape. A fixed media that it's recorded playback over speakers or video or whatever. But in a lot of ways, this is sort of fixed art, and with live players, whether you're a cappella or you're in an ensemble, even with a conductor, there's sort of a reason, it could all fall apart, but there's also that flexibility to breathe and go slower or faster or bring up things, but not with fixed media. So what did you think about that?
Yeah, well, you got to count like a madman. But in that respect, it's a display of virtuosity on my part, in a sort of different kind of a way. Singers are always showing off their voices by how many high notes they have, or whether or not they're able to sing fast runs or loud or whatever. But there's also that, how good of a musician are you? To be able to stay with a track is hard. It's a challenge. And so to a certain extent, it is a way that a singer can prove their mettle, to be able to hang with a track. Because the accompanist can, oops, the singer miscounted, so I'll just skip ahead or whatever. A good accompanist can cover up your mistakes, and if you're working with a live orchestra, the conductor can cue you. Right. There are a lot of ways in which this is a test of one's musical skills. And I've been using tracks a lot with my students lately. And I think it's good for them. I think it challenges them to learn their music correctly. You know, and singers are always being accused of, you know, having lousy rhythm, and, you know, we do have lousy rhythm. It's good for us to be, you know, held to account.
And what do the composers think? Is it more of a freedom or not with having a track?
So if I may speak, this is the first time I've actually done this, and I did it just for this call for scores. And like I said, I was living with this text for decades, and it didn't come to life. And suddenly this brought it to life, of all things. You don't think of passion and computer in the same breath usually. But I said, okay, that's a gauntlet that I can throw down to myself. How can I make this expressive and yet, you know, totally electronicized? And so that's what I tried to do. And I too have a singer's background, Lisa, Andrew. So I hope that comes through in the writing.
Well, if I can chime in, I also was doing this for the first time. And I found that it actually changes the way you think about the composing process, because if you're used to working, you know, with live ensembles, that's what's in your head. And you really have to kind of reorient yourself to this kind of exactitude that the fixed medium brings. I may do more. I mean, I think it's an interesting challenge. It's really a whole different way of approaching the music. So as well as the practical element, which is, you know, I think very significant, there's also this kind of creative challenge.
Well, and in your case, it's even more so because you chose to use percussion, which is, you know, so exacting. There's no schmooze to it at all. You know?
Yeah.
You know, so you really have to be on the stick to sing. I mean, I really had to count like crazy to be on with those. They were a good challenge for me.
Well, much appreciation for the effort. I sincerely and genuinely.
It was a lovely performance.
And I guess, well, is it anybody wants to make any other like comments or things about?
Well, I want to mention something to Alan.
Yeah.
You know, I just was really impressed with how good the computer piano sounded. I thought, okay, this is a MIDI file of a piano sound, but it really was, and you know, the dynamics and the shaping, it shaped phrases, it did some very nice things artistically. It was a good pianist.
Well, I can explain that, because one of the things I do is definitely use dynamic changes to the extreme. I use Sibelius for notation, and that's coupled with note performer for the playback. And they have extreme limitations in the end. But if you add a triple piano to your part, you'll get a much softer sound than if it was just marked piano. So in the score, it may just say piano as an expression mark, but for the sound recording, I'll notate it as a triple piano. So what I'm saying is, when I'm composing, and there's something else I want to mention. When I'm composing, I put in all these dynamic markings, so I create a sound file. Then I go back and I duplicate the file and call it a score, and then get rid of all those markings that you don't want to see. You don't want to see triple piano. You just want to see piano. So it's extra work, but it pays off, because you hear what you want to, the way you want to hear it, because the Sibelius and the performer aren't quite going to give you what you really want to hear. The other thing I do is, especially when I'm running a slow piece that should be expressive, is, and again, it's very tedious, but when I'm creating the sound file, every couple beats, I put a different tempo marking in. So for example, if the tempo was quarter note equals 96, 2 beats later, it's quarter note equals 98. 2 beats later, it might be quarter note back to 96, and 2 beats later, it's now quarter note 95 or 94. And that gives it feeling that it's being played by a human who's not going to be perfect like a machine will be. Then again, once I create that sound file with the flexibility of tempo changes, then I go back and strip those all out again. So it's a lot of extra work, but it pays off because it comes as more expressive. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for doing that, because it really paid off, because I really felt like I was working with a live accompanist on that. It was beautiful, very human, surprisingly so.
And here's a little note from Steven Stanziano. He was listening in the background, congratulating you, Andy. And another comment on, I guess, for me, it's been an interesting. This whole project has been an interesting journey for me as well, in that. I always saw my particular music as like a chamber and electronic. Every once in a while they would mingle, and some years back I did a lot of chamber concerts, and so with the pandemic and so forth, and sort of branching out to people and like helping musicians, I embraced this new idea of Zoom and virtual concerts and things like that. And there's this kind of unique sort of what's the right word? Like nesting of like electronics and, things that are, solid objects and still like flexible. Like as soon as one of the challenges as a producer is like, we're now producing your works and publishing them, right? They're now published online. Here we go. They're out in the world. Yay. But there's a whole bunch of sort of mechanisms that are working in the background. But it's that kind of interesting thing of where, when you write a piece that's, let's say, that's not produced or published or on an album or something like that, it has this, interpretations are encouraged, and, it's different things can happen in different performances and different venues and so forth. So it's been interesting, like this project in particular. So this is our first sort of premiere, right? And we have a couple more planned. Thank you, Andrew. I'm so happy that you're going around showcasing these pieces. And those performances are going to be different from this one, which is very different because this will be archived online, and in a lot of ways it's very static. I mean, what does anybody think about that? Is that an interesting, I don't know, is that cool or what? No comments?
Well, if it's online, you've recorded the event and people can revisit it. It's good to have. It's an archive. Why not?
Right. 2 thumbs up. Yep.
And do you think it's beneficial or detrimental for there being various performances?
Beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't see how it can be any other way.
I actually like
how it can be
that
perceived. Yeah, go ahead.
This was a live performance. It's happening in real time. It's not spliced. It's not a million different takes. So you can get that one note just right. And then, we all know that if you've done that you can do that a little bit to facilitate getting a really good album take. But if you do it too much, the piece doesn't have an arc anymore. It might be note perfect or something, or technique perfect, whatever that means, but it doesn't have the same kind of life. And in some ways it may not be as good, right? If you overdo that in a recording studio. So this is better because it's live performance for an audience. It really happened and this idea of sort of virtual live stream using technology, but still having a real-time feel. This is still happening in real time. It's going through and being transmitted through technology, but we just witnessed a recital happen all the way through one time. I mean, that's what I love. One of my great sorrows as a performer was realizing that my home upload speed wasn't so good for doing that. And that's what led to so many pre-tape and then YouTube premiere releases, which just never felt like the same energy, right. But this has that same energy. So I think it's fantastic.
and we're able to look at all the different places we are. You're in
That
New
too.
York, you are an opposite, you two, whose windows I'm seeing, by the way, the computer's over here. I've got a camera up there and the computer over here, that's why I'm looking over there. But your two little windows are right next to each other, and you're in New York and you're in Portland. And then I have found also that not only are we able to come together for these things from all of our various locations, but then also people do tune in later. People who can't actually make the event but want to are able to come when it's convenient for them and still partake in it. I have a question for Lisa. When you compose, composer composes a piece of music for themselves to sing, it must really be strange to hear somebody else do it, like, giving your baby over to somebody else to hold or something. I mean, it must be very odd, especially since I'm like in a different octave and, just what was that like to hear somebody else sing what you had written for yourself?
Oh, thank you for that question. It's fantastic. I love it. Back when I was first starting this journey of composition in undergrad, and you would write a piece and maybe a friend or a faculty member would sort of like read it through for class. And it was great to hear your music, right? But it wasn't where there was enough depth for someone to interpret. Whenever I hear someone interpret my music, and if they make a different decision than I did, like I get so excited because it means that there's all that space in between the notes for how it's breathed into life. And I particularly write music that needs that. It's not like super overly kind of precise so that it kind of do exactly what's on the page and the piece is like done. It's like there's so much space in this piece. So it's phenomenal to hear you perform it, and it's so great to hear another interpretation. It's a huge thrill.
You do give a lot of information in your.
Oh, good. Okay.
Everything's got a marking on this one crescendos and decrescendos, and this one's got a break, and this one, you give a lot of, stimulus to the imagination.
Good.
I really enjoyed singing that piece. It was a very rich experience for me.
I'm so glad.
The most wonderful thing about it is that I can perform that anytime.
Yeah.
See
what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I don't have to get together with a pianist for it, or get an ensemble together, or I can just sing it.
I've sung this piece in rooftop bars. I've sung it at nightclubs. I've sung it at new music conferences when I didn't know anyone in town to collaborate with. Like this and other pieces from that curation project by others. It's really fun to have that repertoire in your back pocket.
What a great gift. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Well, I think does anybody want to say anything else? And then.
Well, I just want to say thanks.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew.
It's truly my pleasure. Thank you guys. I loved like I said, I'm this particular I also am a vocal composer, so this concert is near and dear to my heart. And, you guys all wrote wonderful pieces. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And so, also like in the background, putting all this stuff together, I want to thank Virtual Concert Halls. Putting these things together is, it's a team effort. And so I want to thank them for helping us. And let me just... thank you again for joining us. This is Composer's Voice, and I look forward to seeing you in the future.